Welcome to episode 467 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Grace Winburn
and Andrew Crawford.
In today's episode, we're going to be talking about movies that we saw this week in part one. And in part two, we're going to continue our Betty and Joan series with 1945's Mildred Pierce, where we will meet the second worst character following the mother in last episode's movie, Now Voyager.
This time it's the daughter.
Yeah, we're continuing to move down. Like I wonder if in Possessed we're just gonna have like a horrible grandmother or something. Just have like a generations of horrible people. That's the
I hope so.
The hope.
I hope so.
All right. Well, let's kick things off in part one with a television show.
Is television cinema?
It's really a 10-hour movie.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Just kidding.
Sure.
Andrew.
No, keep going.
So I want to talk for a little while about The Curse, the new project from the one and only Nathan Fielder, which was a collaboration between him and Benny Safdie, as well as Emma Stone, who plays one of the leads in the TV show. This is such a TV show that you have to jump through every hoop in the digital streaming world to watch this thing. You have to get Paramount Plus, and then you have to get the Showtime add-on for Paramount Plus to watch the new Nathan Fielder show, which I think there's kind of a meta joke in there about, because the whole premise of the show involves Nathan and Emma Stone's characters making an HGTV show. And then at the end of the process, HGTV just like puts it on like the app version of HGTV so that no one actually watches it. I am going to attempt to talk about this thing as spoiler free as possible, even though I just told you that their show gets put on an app at the end. That's not really that big of a spoiler. Trust me, that is not the thing that you don't want spoiled for you at the end of this series. And like, you can also just literally not predict the thing that you don't want spoiled for you at the end of this series. I saw some Letterboxd review that said, like, if you had spoiled it for me, I would think you were joking. But that is actually just how it ends. Yeah, because I know that you guys have not seen this, but you both want to, right?
Yeah, it being behind all these different subscriptions. I mean, like I consider myself a patron of the arts, but like I have my limits.
Right.
If it's not on the streaming service that I already have, then it's like, I'm not really going to go out of my way to get it.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I'm with you. Ordinarily, I would be in the same boat, but I had to do it for Nathan Fielder, who, I was really converted to like a true blue Nathan Fielder believer with The Rehearsal a couple of years ago, which I think is just one of the best pieces of television I've ever seen.
What do you think what do you think like the fan name for Nathan Fielder is, like in the equivalent of like the Swifties? Fielders?
It's a little too simple. Fieldheads? I don't know. Well, I don't have anything good for you right now.
For those on YouTube, comment in the comment section below. Subscribe, Cinematary. Yeah. Subscribe. It helps with the algorithms. Right, go ahead.
Anyways, The Curse. You said, Grace, you're a patron of the arts. This TV show is trying to be like a kind of high art television, but not in a way that I think is like cloying or obnoxious or anything. It's just challenging and demanding of the viewer, in the same way that a lot of the best stuff from the Safdie brothers is. It is stressful, it is intense, it is uncomfortable, and for a good while watching this thing, I was a little too stressed and uncomfortable to really enjoy it. I was texting with Cinematary panelist Michael O'Malley, and he described it as excruciating. And I think that is maybe the perfect word to describe so much of The Curse. But then about halfway through, like exactly halfway through, actually, there's kind of a demarcation really strange moment that happens at the end of episode 5 of this 10 episode series. And then starting at episode 6, the TV show kind of shifts focus, takes a new kind of level of distance between it and its characters, and it completely opened up for me and kind of revealed itself to be a new thing. That was one thing that I loved so much about The Rehearsal. For the first, I don't know, 5 episodes of The Rehearsal, every episode, the show is like continually revealing its true nature to you again. Like you think you know what this is, but no, it's actually this even bigger thing. You think that's what it is, but no, it's actually this even bigger thing. And has this unfolding quality to it. This one doesn't unfold quite as many times as The Rehearsal does. I would say maybe twice does it do something like that, halfway through and then like at the very last episode. But I really do like the way this kind of plays on audience expectations and what you're kind of used to watching the show, because so much of the behavior in the first 5 episodes is just like so painful to watch, and zooming out in the back half of it actually comes as a great reprieve. At least I thought so. But I should talk a little bit more about the premise of this thing for people who are unaware. So Nathan Fielder and Emma Stone play a couple that are attempting to make a show for HGTV called Fliplanthropy, which is just a horrible word. Does not roll off the tongue. Terrible to pronounce. But it's a show kind of like Flip or Flop, something like that. It's all about, the glorification of like the house flipping process, which people should know is just kind of an element of gentrification and people getting priced out of their neighborhoods, and this slow boil of late capitalism that we're all kind of stuck in. But Emma Stone's character wants to do gentrification but woke. Her parents are like known for being these awful like slumlords, and she's really bothered by the public image that her family has kind of been tarred with. So she wants to try to find a way to do real estate differently, and document it for all the world to see, so that she will be looked at as this great virtuous hero of progressivism. And the 2 ways in which she wants to do that is A, she's making what she calls passive homes, which means that they are homes that kind of produce the energy needed to sustain the home. And what that looks like in the show is that we have these big, like cube mirrors. They are, instead of having like solar panels on the roof of your house, the whole house kind of looks like as if a greenhouse was like fully reflective. It's kind of like taking in solar energy all the time, and it looks really eerie. You're kind of, the idea is like, because this is so in tune with the environment, you're not even seeing the house. You're seeing the environment around the house at all times. But the environment around the house is like warped and bubbling and somewhat uncanny and unnerving. And the title card of every episode of the show kind of plays with that in a fun way. And the other way in which she's trying to do gentrification but woke is that she's trying to document the ways in which she's attempting to help the people who live in this community, which is a place called Espanola, New Mexico. I'm actually not sure if Espanola is a real place or not. I'm going to Google it really quick. Espanola, New Mexico.
I like to just live with the...
It is an actual
ambiguity.
Place. But, there are a lot of Black and brown and indigenous people living in this place, largely pretty impoverished. And she is trying to do things like give people jobs with businesses that she just kind of like opens up on her parents' dime, and like invite and it like find new living situations for the people that she's displaced with her ridiculously expensive homes. And it is very clear because of kind of like the meta distance that this show about a show has, that, you know, all of this is very manipulative. It's all kind of these half measures and kind of fake, just symbolic gestures towards being an ally to one community or another, but not actually helping that community in any sort of material way. It's all about just wanting to be seen as the ally of the community. And I think that it's not particularly revelatory to say that the new Nathan Fielder project is kind of interested in the idea of like authenticity, reality versus artifice, real versus fake people, real versus fake activism, real versus fake relationships, real versus fake shows. Because of course, Nathan Fielder has played a lot with your assumption of truth in any sort of television program you're watching from him. Because he does make reality television. Nathan For You and The Rehearsal are different types of reality shows, but he makes it clear to the audience that anytime you're watching a reality show, you are not actually seeing reality. You're seeing kind of this manicured, produced, heavily edited version of a reality that the creator wants you to see. And this is an interesting turn for him, making an actual fictional show about people trying to make a reality show. And you're kind of seeing in like the fictional simulacrum of this show just how false of a construction that is. And, it's also interesting to have Benny Safdie on board, who has worked with so many non-actors throughout his career, and also like has a way of telling fictional stories that do feel really real and really like gritty and visceral, and they have like this propulsive rush to them. And the way this is filmed really adds to that sense of realism, so to speak. So many of the shots are kind of viewed from a great distance, and often through things like windows and tree branches and reflections and things like that. There's actually one moment where Nathan and Emma Stone are talking outside of a window, but we're watching their conversation from inside of the window, where there's just like a woman sitting and watching TV, and all you see is like the top of her head. And at one point she like looks in the camera even. So there's so much of this that feels like you're watching something that you shouldn't be seeing. And also so much that makes you feel like they are making something that they shouldn't be making too. Like there's this feeling of violation that runs through the entire show. And I should also mention kind of the supernatural conceit at the heart of this thing that gives the show its title, which is that in the first episode, I believe, Nathan is allegedly cursed by a little girl who is in a parking lot selling like loose cans of soda for a couple of dollars to try to make a little bit of money for her family. And Nathan hands her a $100 bill on camera to look like a nice, generous guy. And then once he thinks the cameras are not rolling anymore, asks for it back because he was really just doing it for the clout. And this girl says, "I curse you." And it haunts him. The main way in which he finds that he has been cursed is in his what's the like food service thing that's not Blue Apron, but
HelloFresh.
HelloFresh. In his HelloFresh meal that he's preparing that evening, the chicken is missing from his like chicken parmesan pasta, and he believes that he has been cursed. And he goes and speaks to this girl, and she tells him that. Well, actually, I won't go into anything more than that. I mean, that's just like 2 or 3 episodes in, but I do think this is a show that should be experienced as fresh as possible. It is full of surprises. It is full of just like unforgettable moments. And it has an incredible finale. Like I just cannot emphasize enough how ambitious of a finale this show has. I really can't compare it to much other than Twin Peaks: The Return, which I know is high praise. I'm not saying it's as good as Twin Peaks: The Return. I don't even think it's really as good as The Rehearsal. But in terms of artistically ambitious television, I don't think that I've seen a show that demands as much of the viewer as The Curse does, other than Twin Peaks: The Return. So if you like what Nathan Fielder does, if you like, really out there TV, you really need to seek this out. And you need to watch the other Nathan Fielder things if you haven't, because dude is making some really cutting edge stuff right now. So yeah, I guess I will leave it at that, so as to not spoil anything more.
That last point like reminded me of that meme where it's like has only seen Twin Peaks: The Return, and then the review is giving me real strong Twin Peaks vibes.
I've seen other television. I know I have a reputation for not watching television, but I've seen plenty of television, and that show, it does have kind of a singular quality to it, just because of again, like how challenging it is compared to most TV, which is kind of designed to go down real easy.
Yeah. The Curse.
The Curse.
If you go through 2 streaming services, provide your social security number, and give up your firstborn, you can watch it too.
Mm-hmm.
Very complicated way to get to Showtime now. All right, well, I'm going to talk about a movie that is not like that. That is The Passionate Friends by David Lean. So this comes out in, let me look real quick. This is 1949. Brief Encounter is 45. And this movie is very much feels like a spiritual sequel to Brief Encounter. Because not only just because it also stars Trevor Howard, but so it follows Trevor Howard and Ann Todd's characters. They're, you're introduced to them. They're kind of young lovers. Trevor Howard's character wants to get married, but Ann Todd's character very much like she wants more pedigree, more money, just more stature. And so they go their separate ways, and she ends up marrying Claude Rains' character, who is like this very accomplished, very wealthy. I forgot what the hell his job is. It's some like international business thing that you're just like, yeah, he's important. And so it catches up with them, I think like 5 or 6 years later. She's been married to Claude Rains for a while now. Trevor Howard's, they're at this New Year's Eve party, and Trevor Howard's with this girlfriend of his, and they kind of reconnect a little bit since they hadn't talked since they broke up. And they start kind of seeing each other, which rolls into a full-blown affair that Claude Rains finds out about, and separates the two. Kind of gives like an ultimatum of like, it's you or it's him or me, and she selects Claude Rains. And so Trevor Howard disappears for I think like 8 or 9 years, and the movie like really takes place in this resort in Switzerland where Trevor Howard and Ann Todd are there without knowing that each other are there, and kind of connect. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. But this, just to kind of comparing it to Brief Encounter, I think it's a tight 90 minutes, very much built on like yearning and things unsaid, and just kind of like this desire to like kind of like not consummate the relationship, but like make the relationship happen, but they're just, you know, both pulled back by their respective lives that they're in. So you kind of have like that tension and it's broken away. This one is very much like brief encounter, but let's add consequences in from the previous relationship, like through the relationships. But this one's also 90 minutes. It's not like it's considerably longer, but this one definitely deals with like the ramifications of you had an affair, you know, that'll plague, you know, that'll leave signs in that, you know, relationship that you're in. You know, just kind of feelings that are kind of left there and unpursued. I think like Brief Encounter is a perfect movie. At least in my opinion.
Yeah.
Perfect movie.
One of the best.
This one's not, because this one, like, I think the whole, like, the fact that it has ramifications, like, that takes you away a little bit, just because like you don't have that. Just, I think the way I was describing it to somebody, it's like, for a more modern comparison, Brief Encounter is like before sunset. This is before sunrise. Like, this is the one where it's like the love is still there, but there's also like you have responsibilities.
Yeah.
And I think that works. I think that David Lean is able to still capture like this very passionate love yearning drama while also including all that, because one, like we learned, like I watched this a couple days after we did Now Voyager. Claude Rains is just good in everything, like just a good actor. He's really good in this.
Hot take.
Yeah, just what, you don't like Claude Rains?
No, I was joking. I think
okay.
I think most people like Claude Rains.
Oh, I was like, there's like a contingent of like anti-Claude Rains people.
Have you seen The Invisible Man, Zach?
No, I need to watch that though. After,
it's just Claude Rains acting like a maniac.
Yeah, I like that
movie.
This one though, he's like it's very like in a very internal performance. Like, it's a lot of him just kind of like, it's written by written by Eric Ambler. So like Noel Coward wrote Brief Encounter. This one's by Eric Ambler, who's like he was a very prominent British like espionage spy novelist. And like it kind of has that feeling to it. It kind of has like this like almost espionage feel to it. Claude Rains just feels like this very like well connected, able to kind of suss out anything personality to him. You know, there's the sequence of him kind of discovering that they're having this affair, and like he's like such a little drama queen, and he like sets up the room and is like, yeah, come in, let's have a drink, you know, like let's do it. And then he like leaves like the smoking gun that kind of saying, I know that, you know, you're having an affair, until Ann Todd kind of like notices it and he's like, I'm onto you. Which Claude Rains does Claude Rains does that stuff very well. But yeah, I just like this one seems to be kind of forgotten, I feel like, in terms of not only like in relation to Brief Encounter, but just like David Lean's work in general. And like I said, it's not nearly as steamy. It's not nearly as immediately drawing you in as Brief Encounter does. But I like the complexity. I like the stakes that are involved in that. Like like Brief Encounter has stakes, of course, but like there's something about this where, you know, it's not as like cut and dry as that. It's not like we can be together, or we can be together and you have to leave your spouse, or, you know, we have to cut this off completely and you go home. It's like there's just kind of constantly like this kind of gray area, this moral gray area, and all of the characters are like kind of like morally gray. Like you're not like, you know, Trevor Howard and Ann Todd are just trying to love each other and like have a good life, and Claude Rains is getting in the way. Like, I think there's kind of this grayness to the characters that adds some depth to it. And then like the finale of the movie is not jarring, but like much more provocative than in like how the nature of this love triangle moves forward that I feel like is like something that Brief Encounter kind of leaves in the dark a little bit. I don't know. It is currently on Criterion Channel. It looks like you can kind of rent it or find it in other places. If you're a fan of Brief Encounter, like this is a great double feature for sure, as kind of like a B side to the A side that is Brief Encounter.
Mhm.
But at the same time, even though it's like you could say it's a B side, like this is also an incredibly great movie in its own right. And I feel like one that I don't know, doesn't get the same exposure, the same people talking about it as Brief Encounter. So check it out. Passionate Friends.
Sweet.
It's good. All right.
I'd like to see it.
It's a good one. All right, Grace, blast us away with the last movie for part 1.
Stick 'em up.
Yeah.
I watched 1961's Blast of Silence, written, directed, and starring Alan Barron. This is one that you guys have talked about already before on the podcast, but like you guys said, after 400, how many? 467.
67. Yeah, I don't remember.
Episodes. Sorry.
I remember sure talking.
We'll.
There was a movie recently that I was like, oh, that looks interesting, and I looked at it, I'm like, holy shit, we did an episode on that.
Do you remember what the movie was?
Forgot it again.
Well, they'll still stay fresh when they're that good. But this was great, and the only difference is I hadn't seen it, I haven't talked about it, so I guess we'll just keep going with
That
it.
freshens it up.
Yeah. I really enjoy noir as a genre. I'm a big fan. I seem to talk about it a lot. And the movie that we'll talk about in the second half is a noir, so this just felt like a proper pairing as it highlights and brings out some themes and conventions of noir that are missing in the like family melodrama aspect of Mildred Pierce.
Mm-hmm.
With Blast of Silence, the action exists mostly in voiceover narration. This is a case study of a killer, the psychology of a killer, while a hired killer, a gun for hire, as he is given his next assignment. And so this looks at, how does he approach his work? How does he justify his work? And his relationship to death and killing, while also highlighting this life of violence that he was born into, this cycle of violence he is forced, unfortunately, against his will, against all odds, to perpetuate and to continue. It's pretty sad. It's pretty depressing. He's definitely a detestable character. This Frankie Bono, little boy Frankie Bono.
Frankie Bono.
Yeah, it's very you really want to say it with like a cigar in your mouth. A wise guy.
Yeah.
I like the wise guys, or at least that could just be a me thing. But Frankie Bono, a hired gun out of Cleveland, gets to New York around Christmas. Maybe not Christmas Eve, but certainly Christmas Adam, because that's the day before. Adam comes before Eve. And so silence, a blast of silence.
Yeah, really, we really served you up with that one. Yeah.
Anyways,
it's Christmas Eve. It's Christmas Eve.
It's Christmas Eve. He gets to New York via the trains, underground. He moves underground, subterranean, kind of like a rat in a sewer, and which is very powerful. And this is a killer that is good at his job. That's one thing that we know from the narration, from his monologue, that he is good at what he does, and he knows it. And that confidence is interesting. He's good at what he does. He knows it. He's proud of it, and he shares the way that he sort of accepts his line of work. He takes us through the process where he begins to first tail his target. He learns everything about him. He gets his schedule down. by memory. He then starts to develop a hate for his target. He starts to see his target, this mob boss Troiano. We don't know too much about him. We don't need to know too much about him. We know exactly what, little boy Frankie Bono knows, which is he's got to go. And so that helps us to also maybe start to hate our target as well. Although I really just hated Frankie Bono. He's a grabby, violent creep. You don't really get much of a sense of his past. We don't know who he was before he got to this point, but he encounters some figures from his past, and you get a sense that he was a loner. He wasn't really friends with these people, but he knew them, and he longed for what they had, which was each other. It's a brother and sister duo that he meets that he just sort of runs into all over the course of this job. He has no idea that they were here in New York, and I'm sure that they weren't really expecting to see him, but they recognize him, and he doesn't really recognize them right away, but he does recognize the sister because he was in love with her, of course. She's beautiful, shiny, and she represents the life that he could have lived, maybe if he made some different choices. Although you get the feeling that he knows in his heart he was made for this life of violence, and he could have never had that. But at one point he does reach out and grabs it violently. Things get a little violent alone in her apartment one night. And that was very hard to watch because in his mind, he doesn't think he's doing anything wrong. And really she was just reaching out to an old childhood friend. When he realizes that life that he wants so bad, that life that he, makes a grab at, is barred from him, at that point, the damage is already done, because he has tried to get out of this underworld, sort of break free from this job. And that's a mistake. That shows weakness, and all it takes is one slip up. So now he's got to do the job no matter what. And then, of course, there's another stumbling block. His job gets discovered. This mark that he has on Troiano is, it's not so much that he's caught in the act, but a contact of his now knows who the hit is for. And that complicates things. No one's supposed to know that this mob boss is getting bumped off, but the man who's giving him the gun to do the killing now knows who it's going towards. So that complicates things. That's a loose end that he has to tie up. And then we get our first sense of real bloody violence. And it is hard to watch. It is loud. I mean, you wonder, why isn't anybody in this apartment complex coming down or intervening? You don't hear the sirens. You just hear the bludgeoning and beating to death of this contact. And Frankie Bono wins. I wonder if, he just is death himself. So that's all he can do. And of course he kills. And of course he was going to kill this contact who's either him or me. And I work alone. He gets the hit done, and he does it well. He gets away with it. But of course, you only have to mess up once for the people in charge to notice. So he becomes a loose end himself. He dies alone. You are born alone, you die alone, and in between you live alone and kill alone. And it's such a depressing movie, but it's a noir, but it was really good. I enjoyed it. I was hooked the entire time. I couldn't look away. I felt really sorry for this person who seems to be just born into this cycle again and again. The opening shot is a dark tunnel with a little pinpoint of light, go towards the light, step into the light, and it's him being born, and he dies in the darkness. So it just keeps going. He'll never rid himself of this cycle, and he'll always be born into this violence, this darkness, this silence. Blast of Silence is on Criterion, and it is fabulous. Please check it out. noir movies are a treat to watch. There's always something to discuss and analyze in them.
The whole Cemetery episode of us discussing and analyzing it. If you want to go check it out after you watch.
Should you?
Oh yeah, that's good.
Should you please?
If you can't get enough of Blast of Silence.
Yeah, I was going to look
up. It was a Patreon pick.
It is.
Right?
Wow.
It was a Patreon pick. It was episode 435. That's that's only 30 episodes ago. We're really bad that we're forgetting.
I'm sorry, guys. I had no idea.
Yeah, it was just. Thank God the only two people on the episode are on this episode also.
Something.
I remember very little about Blast of Silence, to be honest.
Yeah,
but that's not a mark against the movie. That's just my own memory.
Yeah. Yeah. No, clearly that's not something that we should be trusting from the two of us. I remember that we did an episode on this. I remember a lot of the movie. Like I remember parts of the movie, but it's been that's 30 other movies we've talked about since then. You know what movie we did 2 episodes before that I 100% remember? Clooney Brown. You know why? Because that movie slaps.
Love Clooney Brown.
Clooney Brown.
It's an Ernst Lubitsch movie.
Oh God,
oh.
Grace, I feel like you'll love Clooney Brown.
You would love Clooney Brown.
I feel like you would be like, hell yeah, Clooney Brown. She has a little she wears like a little, what is it, like she's a little plumbing.
She's a plumber.
Plumbing outfit.
Cute.
She's a woman with a passion for plumbing.
She is.
Passion for pipes.
Clooney Brown on something, some sort of service you can watch. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and then we'll be back with one of the mothers of noir with 1945's Mildred Pierce. We're back with part 2 of episode 467 of Cemetery. In this part, we're going to be continuing our Bloody Jones series with 1945's Mildred Pierce, directed by Michael Curtiz, from a script by Curtiz and Ranald McDougall. The film stars Joan Crawford, Jack Carson, Zachary Scott, Ann Blythe, and Bruce Bennett. When Mildred Pierce's wealthy husband leaves her for another woman, Mildred decides to raise her 2 daughters on her own. Despite Mildred's financial successes in the restaurant business, her eldest daughter, Vida, resents her mother for degrading their social status. In the midst of a police investigation after the death of her second husband, Mildred must evaluate her own freedom and her complicated relationship with her daughter. When studio executive Jack L. Warner proposed filming the James M. Cain novel, Joseph Breen of the MPPA wrote in a letter dated February 2nd, 1944, quote, "The story contains so many sordid and repellent elements that we feel the finished picture would not only be highly questionable from the standpoint of the code, but would likewise meet with a great deal of difficulty in its release." Breen went on to suggest that the story be dismissed from further considerations. The major changes made by the writers to conform to the code involved the elimination of overt references to extramarital sex and the blackening of Vida's character. Monty's murder was added by the screenwriters for dramatic purposes. Producer Jerry Wald wanted Ralph Bellamy for the role of Bert. Donald Woods was also considered for the part, and George Coulouris also tested for it. Bonita Granville, Virginia Weidler, and Martha Vickers tested for the part of Vida, and modern sources added that Jack Carson was also considered for the part of Monty, eventually getting the role of Wally. In 1942, 2 years earlier, Joan Crawford had been released from MGM due to a mutual agreement. Crawford campaigned for the lead role in Mildred Pierce, which most lead actresses did not want because of the implied age as mother of a teenage daughter. Warner Brothers and director Michael Curtiz originally wanted Bette Davis to play the title role, but she declined. Curtis did not want Crawford to play the part. He campaigned for Barbara Stanwyck, who was working on My Reputation at the time. When he learned that Stanwyck was not going to be cast, he then tried to recruit either Olivia de Havilland or Joan Fontaine to play Mildred, but both were still in their 20s. He ultimately approved Crawford's casting after seeing her screen test. Even so, Curtiz and Crawford were often at odds on the set, with producer Jerry Wald acting as Peacemaker. Other than a brief appearance in Warner Brothers' Hollywood canteen, this film was the first that Joan Crawford made for Warner Brothers. According to information included in the file on the film in the Warner Brothers collection, Kane sent a first edition of the novel to Crawford on March 7, 1946, which was inscribed to Joan Crawford, who brought Mildred to life just as I had always hoped she would be, and who has my lifelong gratitude. Crawford named Mildred Pierce as the role she liked best. Among the many versions of the screenplay, William Faulkner's rewrite differed significantly from the others, according to modern sources. He wrote an elaborate voiceover narration and concentrated on Mildred's restaurant business, describing sleazy, underhanded business dealings. Vida is even more calculating and cold than she appears in the final film in that rewrite.
God, why doesn't someone film William Faulkner's Mildred Pierce?
I guess William
Come
Faulkner...
on.
There might be like a series out of that. William Faulkner has a lot of dallies in Hollywood, mainly like rewriting stuff. Yeah. So kind of fun. In 1945, the New York Times said Mildred Pierce lacks the driving force of stimulating drama, and its denouement hardly comes as a surprise, but it is cut from a pattern that has been hugely successful in the past, and it probably will be this time too. And the New Yorker in 1945 said, certainly despite its unconscionable length, it takes almost 2 hours.
Unconscionable.
Mildred Pierce contains enough excitement to jolt even the most lethargic customer. It is pleasant to report that Miss Crawford is no longer as frantic in appearance as she once was. Despite all kinds of chances to go berserk as a Kane mother, Miss Crawford remains subdued and reasonable like most of the rest of a highly competent cast. A deeply unsexist review. And most importantly, Letterboxd user Slippin' Jimmy says on October 16th, 2022, "Oh, boo-hoo, you walked in on your daughter and her stepdad making out. Give me a break."
1 star.
1 star.
Also, as a side note, I just did a quick William Faulkner Letterboxd search, and he wrote a Douglas Sirk movie, The Tarnished Angels. I need to see this movie.
Yeah.
Not Imitation of Life.
Not that one.
No. All right. On that note, let's talk a little bit about Mildred Pierce. Grace, I'm going to give the floor to you to talk a little bit about the movie.
Sure, where to begin? So like you said in your introduction, this was the first movie that Joan made for Warner after she was let out of her contract from MGM. You said it was a mutual thing. It surely was. At that point in her career, or towards the end of her time with MGM, she was labeled box office poison. Nobody wanted to work with her. She had a couple of flops, but this was after doing everything MGM told her to do. She was in every movie, every picture that they wanted her to do. She dutifully did and did her best. She was trying to branch out a little more in her career as well at this point after a couple of different sort of rebranding efforts. At this point, she was working on being a serious actress and tried to play these sort of high art parts for MGM, and that didn't really go over well. Then she tried to sing in Escapades of 1939, and she had some original songs. They cut all of them. So just embarrassment upon embarrassment. She's snubbed for an Oscar, and, you know, she really feels like she could be doing more and jump ship to Warner. At this point, the Queen of Warner was Bette Davis, and you know, if another leading female, you know, of the stature of Joan comes over to my studio and starts taking up parts that are for me that I'm having such a hard time getting, you know, I'm sure that created a hostile work environment for the two, to say the least. So Mildred Pierce is Joan's foray into noir, and this is a fabulous example of noir. She is such a good femme fatale. She's pulpy, a very striking, you know, sort of silhouette, and very pouty. I just love her look and everything. She's gorgeous in this. She's very controlled in this. She gives really good face The physicality she just shows. She doesn't really act. You know, she gives like a lot of
It's in the
emotion,
eyes.
a lot of eyes. She emotes
Yeah.
really well, but she gives these very controlled deliveries. Her dial, she's quick. She's got the banter down, the cadence of a James M. Cain novel, like Double Indemnity, like this. The back and forth is so biting and so sharp. And she, to me, paints a really good picture of a mother on the verge of a nervous breakdown, a mother who is guilty for some missteps in her parenting, and just a woman trying to hold her family together and really give her children the life that she never had. So I love this. I think I might be more Team Joan. I just like an icon. You know, maybe that's just how I feel, but I think I really love Joan in this, and she gives a very good performance, I think. So.
Yeah, we were talking off mic before recording. I think, was it you proposed the question of like, would you rather be an icon like Joan,
a movie star or an actor?
A movie star or an actor. Thinking of Joan and Betty as like being the two sides of that coin. And yeah, I mean, she does have like, she just kind of brings her look and her presence to this, as opposed to like going back to Now Voyager, when Bette Davis like truly transforms over the course of that movie, like what she looks and acts like in the first 10 to 20 minutes is nothing like what you end up seeing from her later. She can really like be a chameleon, right? And I don't want to like sound harsh when I say it seems like Joan Crawford is bringing less, because I think that like having a poker face is actually really valuable for this character. Like so much of the conflict of the story is like she's not being like fully transparent with other people about what her motives are or like where she wants her relationships to go. She's just kind of like navigating them in a very like cool and calculating way. Like I'm thinking about the scene where it's Wally, the guy who's like obsessed with her but never gets with her. She tells Wally that she's in love with the really rich guy, Monty Barragon, is that how you say his name? I forget.
Yeah.
And Wally's like heartbroken and walks out. And then while she's saying it, like the audience can't tell if she actually does love Monty. Like, is her love something that is just so internal to her that she's not showing it on her face, or is she lying about it? And then when that guy leaves and then she's having a conversation with her coworker, she asks like, well, do you love him? And she's like, well, I thought I did once, but now I'm not sure. There's this psychological complexity to this character that's not necessarily presented, on its face in Joan Crawford's face.
She kind of seems to be like romantically ambiguous about everybody, though. She seems dutiful to Bert, her first husband, but like you catch them at the tail end of their relationship, but at the same time, like it seems to be more like duty, and then it honestly becomes like more, like a respect kind of friendship almost by the end of the movie. Like, they seem to like have some sort of state of a relationship that has like no romantic overture, but she seems very like romantically agnostic, which it seems, I think that's kind of what drives the drama of this movie, which is about the path that Vita takes, is that like kind of it's like a mother's love for a child. Like that seems to be like her love of the movie. It's not necessarily any of these characters that she meets.
But even that relationship is really hard to read. Like, does she actually love her daughter, or is she in this weird power struggle with her daughter the entire time? At the beginning of the movie, her soon-to-be ex-husband says like, well, your youngest daughter adores you, but you're not really like vying for her attention in the way that you're vying for the attention of the daughter who like scorns you all the time. It seems like she's almost trying to prove something to her daughter, and she maybe isn't even sure if that's what she wants.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess sometimes. So, to Joan's credit, I think that she's trying to give us some sort of psychological display. I think that she's trying to play it as, the thing that you want the most is the thing that you can't have, and that could be your daughter's love. I definitely see her at first. I think she's a very good mom in the beginning. It paints a picture of like you said, a dutiful one, but one who got married at 17. So all she's known is just to be a mom, just to clean house, not even really be a wife or really a good wife, but a good mother. And I think that she likes that role and that duty as homemaker more than being a businesswoman. But she's a good businesswoman. But that like love and relationship with Vita is everything to her, and that's all she does care about. Like, romance doesn't really register with her, I don't think. Her sexuality is a little muddy.
She reads as like a asexual or aromantic character who's of course living in the 1940s where there are like she's just kind of conforming to the options that society is giving her. And it's interesting to think about like you want the thing that you can't have, considering how much men are like constantly reminding her how much they want her to like an uncomfortable degree. Like, I don't know how she's able to maintain a relationship with this Wally guy. Like every time he opens his mouth, it is just like the most blatant sexual harassment you can imagine.
I like the first scene that she has with him when he like comes over the night after her husband has left, and she's like, yeah, he's gone. He's like, off to the races.
Right,
like,
exactly.
I heard a starting bell, ding.
Yeah,
he just walks in. Yeah,
he just like goes from like 0 to 100 on her the entire time until she's finally like, get the hell out of here. Like,
but it's very clear that is far from the first time that he's done that. It's not like just because the husband's gone, now it's time to start putting the moves on. He never stops. It seems. And so like the movie does also portray Mildred as like kind of stoic in the face of that. Like she's had to create this tough, hard exterior where she doesn't really show her frustration, her sadness on her face, because if she did, she would just kind of be walked all over or taken advantage of or whatever. Like she's just kind of had to become this force,
this hardened businesswoman, and it works so well for her. She does turn a nice profit. She's good at this. She's a good waitress. Watching that as someone who waits tables, I'm like, I would die if that was how I had to work. That looks so hard. Calling stuff out on the fly like that, I don't think I could do it. I'm glad I'm a server with a POS or the toast apps where you like do it in your hand.
I see that and I feel bad for the chef, the cook or whatever. I'm just like I wouldn't remember that. You're just shouting stuff at me right now.
Hold on. What'd you say? Say it again.
They want what? While a deeply sexist review, the New Yorker review kind of alludes to the fact that like she has much more like she's prone to like becoming more like showy and like bombastic with her emotions in her previous roles compared to this, which is like we talked about, like much more restrained and inward. Is that something, as somebody who's probably, I feel like I'm looking at you, Grace, as our Joan Crawford expert for this episode. Is that something that's true? Like, is she much more lively in previous roles, and this one's much more like contained than before?
Oh, certainly. With MGM, she got her start as a flapper, as a dancer. So she's a jazz girl and very showy, all eyes on her. And that sort of spilled out into her personal life. Then she sort of reined it all in. But what she wanted was to do something serious, do something that would speak to her talents. And I think that she was sort of emboldened by her second marriage to a artist and actor, a man that came from the stage first and then to the screen. His name was Frencho Tone, and he also starred opposite Betty. So he brought out the sort of more serious actress side in her. So I think that this is like, in her cycles of rebranding, I think that this is exactly what she wanted to do at that exact moment, and she delivered. So yes, to answer your question, yes.
Yeah,
and answer your question? I think it does.
Yeah, and it seems like the fact that like she really campaigned for herself to like get the role, not only because it's a good part, but also because it seems like it's that perfect step in that evolution of like kind of establishing yourself as much more of like this is like an actor role. Like this is very much like you like it's the whole thing is built on pulling off the Mildred role, because I feel like if you don't nail that, then the whole thing doesn't really work.
And she does for me. I found her very sympathetic. What a sad story, like to watch her try and fail like that to save her daughter, who's just so ungrateful, who's just the worst.
Yeah,
oh my God.
Sucks, man.
At the end, I was like, just take her to jail. Like, that's fine. Just get her out. Like, we're all helping everybody.
So you said that was part of the Hays Code rewrites, as they blackened the character of the daughter.
Yeah, they made her more like kind of conniving and calculating as she was in this one. And then William Faulkner was like, not enough, and then and, like cranked that dial. But yeah, I guess because I think the Hays, like, you couldn't like be ambiguous. You had to be like, she's not good. Like, that's the bad guy.
And she has to suffer. She has to be arrested, and she has to like.
Yeah, she has to suffer. She has to suffer and pay for her actions.
I don't think though that. I mean, we have a terrible child in this movie. There's no getting around it, right? Like one of the worst movie children. But I think the movie is a little bit more like morally, psychologically complicated than just kid bad, like so much of it does have to do with that interdependent relationship between Mildred and her daughter. She says over and over, I just wanted to give her the things that I never had as a child. And her, again, soon to be ex-husband accuses her of like, well, you're trying to make her feel as though her father's a millionaire, when she's not. And so there's so much of this, this like just terminally bougie mindset that her daughter has been instilled and cultivated in her by her mother, who is then like baffled by the fact that her daughter is only interested in these like material things.
Yeah, I wish we could have established that a little bit more at the beginning.
I agree. Yeah.
Like it kind of like you kind of jump into it and it's fine, but then it's just kind of like it's not enough for her. And like I feel like it never really illustrated her struggle with that. Like there was never like a scene or something that kind of like showed that Vita did not approve of like her mother's handling of life. It just kind of like that switch just kind of turned on, midway through the first act.
But you still see Mildred kind of learning the wrong lessons from her daughter's behavior later in the movie. For example, when she decides that she's going to marry Monty exclusively for his money as a way of like enticing her daughter back. Like that doesn't register as just kind of feeding the one thing about her daughter that's been getting in the way of their relationship the entire time.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. I agree with that. I don't agree with you. I do think that Vita has established her love and want of the finer things in life the way that she speaks to her mother, the tone she takes with her, how she pries into her parents' marital affairs, the names that she calls people. Like, I think that they do a really good job of establishing that this sort of manipulative behavior that she has. Anytime she speaks to her mom, it seems like she's always forcing Mildred's hand, and all Mildred wants is her daughter. So she sort of just relents. It seems like there's like it's a battle of wills between the two, and like Vita wins out, and she's too powerful and too headstrong, and that's ultimately her downfall. But like I just see a mother trying to protect their child, even though they know that they have a hand in the way that they are. Like, she's also a little guilty of that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is that like it is not entirely on the daughter, right? Like there's a little bit of grayness to Mildred too.
What did y'all make of? We talked a little bit about Wally, and there's not too much to say about Bert. He's around, but I don't feel like he's ever around long enough to establish a character. But I feel like Monty is very much like he's integral to he's integral to the plot. But yeah, he doesn't offer much.
He says he likes to loaf, but he loafs. Oh God, what is the phrase that he uses? He says, charming in a charming and decorative way. He likes to loaf. That's what he does professionally.
Yeah. It's just the way that she's kind of courted by him is interesting. You think about, like, again, going back to talking about kind of the romance of the movie. You have that scene where she's working on the restaurant and she's like, wanting to work, and he's like, no, come to the beach with me, please. And
men kind of like, can't stop just like kind of kissing her without really any invitation to do so.
That kiss between them was slick, though. I thought that was kind of slick. Maybe that's a little questionable, but okay.
But then, like, even though it's like cleaned up for the Hays Code, like she stays at his house that night, which is the same night that Kay comes back sick. Which is, I guess that's not his fault. I feel like that would be, though, a sticking point in the relationship of kind of like you wanted me to,
for sure.
You brought me back to your place because you were just wanting to like woo me and have sex with me, and then I wasn't there when my daughter got pneumonia.
This is the plot of The Empty Man, or part of it, anyway.
I don't know. That's what I was thinking of. I was like, I feel like that, like I feel like she should hold a little bit of that against Monty, of kind of like, because you were horny, I wasn't at home when my daughter came back sick.
He's such a cad. I mean, like, he really shows himself to be a dog from the very beginning. All those extra bathing suits, and he's so grabby, so handsy. I kind of struggled with him. Like I said, I liked that one kiss, but then the rest of it, I felt like he immediately set his sights on Veda, like the younger of the Pearsons, and on to the next one.
Yeah, I figured that they probably wouldn't go that far considering the time period, but I did have that thought the second you see them sitting in that booth together in a restaurant, like, oh, he's going after the daughter.
He uses the same line on her.
Yeah, with the palm reading thing.
Yeah, I'm just an old gypsy fortune teller. I was like, he's what a beast. He's got a line. That's his chat up line. Mm-hmm. It's awful.
Yeah. Do you want to talk very briefly about the connection between this and Imitation of Life?
Yeah. So there's a scene near the end of Mildred Pierce where what is the daughter's name? You guys have said it a million times. Veda. Vita. Vita has, unbeknownst to Mildred, become like a dancer at a club, right? She's coming out and she's in a frilly, like leotard or something, and she's singing a silly song, and she's, getting wolf whistles from the crowd. And after this performance is over, Mildred goes into her dressing room, and one of her coworkers, another dancer at the club, is in there. And the dancer says, "Oh, I didn't know that you had a mother." And Vita says, "Well, I suppose everybody does." And then Mildred and Vita, once Vita gets her coworker out of the room, have like a long, tearful conversation in which the mother is like begging Vita to, come back and live with her, leave this life of hedonistic debauchery behind. And Vita won't do it. Like, this is the life I'm choosing for myself. This is the life that I want to live. And I am having flashbacks to Douglas Sirk's Imitation of Life, which came out that's over a decade later, right?
Yeah, it's 59.
59.
But the original one with what's her face is 1934.
True. Though I'm wondering, is that same scene in there? I'm not sure.
Well, that's what I'm trying to. I've only seen the Claudette Colbert one once, so I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I don't remember if that line's in that movie.
Well, for people who have not seen Imitation of Life, hard to summarize what all that movie is about very briefly, but a big thread of that movie involves a very light-skinned Black woman who is like kind of trying to escape the racism of America, is attempting to pass as white. And so she runs away from home. She works at a very similar type of dance club that we see in Mildred Pierce. And her mother, who's like a Black maid who lives in a white family's house, comes in and asks her to come home. And the line, I think, in Imitation of Life from like this character's coworker is, "I never knew you had a mammy." And she tries to play it off as though her mom was actually her servant growing up. Really, really fucked up. But if Douglas Sirk is not just kind of reusing a scene that was in the 20s Claudette Colbert version, he's reappropriating the Mildred Pierce scene and kind of like transposing it onto like a racial matrix, a racial paradigm. There's actually a very brief Letterboxd review from Jordan Searles on Letterboxd for Mildred Pierce, where she says this is Imitation of Life but for class. And so much of it does kind of fit along that interpretation. It's kind of about the way in which society kind of incentivizes people to aspire to certain arbitrary characteristics. And in so aspiring to those things, they end up kind of like ruining their own lives and relationships in the process. And Imitation of Life is kind of touches on class too. I actually really like the way in which that movie investigates the way in which all these different, matrices of oppression are interconnected with one another. But Mildred Pierce is like really laser focused on just, again, terminal bouginess. If you want to pretend you're French, that's gonna make you into a fucked up weirdo.
N'est-ce pas? Oh, I want to hear that. Oh my god!
When she says at the beginning, like, I'm learning this new piece. It's called Waltz Brilliance. It means brilliant waltz.
Mildred kind of laughs at her. Oh, does it?
Oh, is that right?
Good thing you're so pretty, Vita.
Yeah.
She's cold-blooded.
Yeah. Imitation of Life. Go check that out if you haven't.
God, that movie's so good.
Any final thoughts on Mildred Pierce before we wrap up?
Yes, I watched it a second time, and one thing that I noticed or paid attention to on the second viewing was the shadows and the lighting of this fabulous movie. And that's what makes it like such a great noir. But I specifically noticed at various points how important characters' shadows were. In the beginning, where we are in real time after Monty being shot, shadows across the walls. They announce a character's interest, or they trail behind the character, but the character always has a shadow. In the flashback, when life is all good before things go sideways, everything's bright and light and there is no shadow. It looks like they're lit from above. But it's when Wally and Mildred leave his real estate office that we see their shadows shaking hands, or like making this sort of deal that they're going into business together. And that's sort of like, okay, that signals this sort of, there's this narrative shift where we're making dealings in the dark and the shadows, like what Faulkner wanted, but that was too much maybe.
And when he tells her that he's going to take his stake in the company too, it's there. That's a very heavily silhouetted scene as well.
Yes, absolutely. And everybody has, parts of their face, in light or, in shadow. Vita and Monty, they kiss. They're completely in the dark, but you just see their silhouette. And Vita, she comes out into the light and you see her. And in that moment, I think that Anne Blythe does a really fabulous job. She looks like a little kid that just got caught, or, doing something wrong, or a little kid that just got hurt and is looking to their mother for that reaction of like, okay, is this worse than what I think it is? I'm gauging how I feel about this based on your reason. But that was just one thing I really was hooked by in this second viewing. And finally, when Veda confesses and they take her away, the detective, the police chief, pulls the blinds up, and then the light shines in and gets rid of all the shadows. So truth set her free from this shadowy underworld.
Yeah, it has such a great noir opening that it made me want a little bit more like play with light and shadow throughout the whole movie. But I like those examples that you cited, Grace. I guess if I could bring up one more thing we haven't talked about, it would be the role of Butterfly McQueen, who plays Joan's black servant. She has this really distinctive, like almost unreal sounding high-pitched voice. I don't know if it is her real voice or if it's being played up for the movie, but it definitely seems like both in this and in Gone with the Wind, where she's also a slave, I guess a servant, because it's like post Civil War. But regardless, it seems like the films are kind of playing up that infantilized quality that her voice has. And I guess that's another way in which like this movie has an interesting connection with Imitation of Life to me, because that movie is like attempting to sort of recenter the lived experience of somebody like Butterfly McQueen's character, who is just otherwise kind of a background character in this movie. I was looking at her Letterboxd bio, and a quote from her was when she's talking about, being typecast as a maid and being asked to do the same types of things over and over. She said, "I didn't mind being funny, but I didn't like being stupid." And that made me think of the moment in Mildred Pierce where she's, serving people at this party that Mildred's throwing, and the phone rings, and there's this brief like attempt at comedy where she like doesn't know how to answer the phone, which like doesn't make any sense to a viewer of this movie, knowing that like she's probably the person who answers the phone all the time. Like, how does she not know how to answer the phone? So there is like a certain blindness to like racial cast in this movie, and kind of like an active racism on the part of the movie, despite the fact that it's so, despite or like because of the fact that it's like so laser focused on class, it doesn't necessarily connect those dots.
Yeah. that was, yeah, it's pretty overt.
Mm-hmm.
I would just like to give credit to Butterfly. She's in Gone with the Wind and in this, and both Betty and Joan auditioned for Gone with the Wind and didn't get it. So it's like,
oh wow,
take that. You're, this co-star that is uncredited and, the butt of racial insensitivity, starred in the biggest movie of your careers that you never had. So take that.
Take that. Well, that will wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find this on Facebook at facebook.com/cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at handle @cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/cinematary, where you list the movies that we talked about in this episode. If you would like to support the show, patreon.com/cinematary. Big thanks to our patrons, Cam, Candace Sisson, Ron Hayes, Tanner Huskins, Teresa Marsathi, and Tyler Chandler. Thank you so much for your patronage. Next episode, we're going to be continuing our Joan and Betty series. Betty and Joan. I forget which one.
We're doing All About Eve, right?
Yes.
No, we're doing 1947's Possessed.
1931.
Wait, I thought that was the next Joan movie.
Yeah.
Aren't we going back and forth?
Wait, she did 1931 Possessed and a 1947 Possessed?
Yeah, she did a Possessed with MGM and a Possessed with Warner.
Fun. Part of me wants to watch both of them. Are they the same plot?
No, the Possessed one with MGM is her and Clark Gable, and that was like a lover of hers. And then the Warner one, I'm not sure who's in that one, but she's like a kept woman in the Clark Gable one.
Yeah. Okay.
So is our next episode not a Betty Davis episode?
All About Eve?
No, that's All About Eve is the last episode.
Oh.
So
no, I thought the last episode was Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Well, that's the last one in terms of like the back and forth. No, next episode is 1931's Possessed.
If you say so.
Okay.
I'm in charge, and I say 500 it is.
Okay.
I'm going to change the whole script, and we're going to watch FX's Betty versus Joan. We're going to watch the whole series and do an episode on it.
Sure.
Speaking of which, just to like completely end the episode, has anybody seen the Todd Haynes miniseries?
Oh man, I really want to.
Wasn't Seth supposed to?
Huh?
Or not Seth, Reed? Didn't he say that who was it? Somebody said that they wanted to see it or had
I want to see it. I have not.
I kind of want to watch it now. Yeah.
It's got to be good.
Yeah. Anyway, until next episode, which is 1931's Possessed.
Okay.
Thank you for listening. We'll see you there.